The warfare is real simple.
JFK tried to break America free from the Federal Reserve Bank stranglehold on the people of the United States.
I said, we're going to war with Iraq. Why? He said, I don't know. He said, I guess they don't know what else to do.
This is a quote 7 days from before he died. He says, "There is a plot in the country to enslave every man, woman and child. Before I leave this high and noble office, I intend to expose this plot." 7 days later, he died. What you need to know is JFK actually started to print what became known as the American or the United States note, which is not printed by the Federal Reserve Bank, and therefore taking the control away from the Fed. As soon as they assassinated him in Dallas in 1963, within 2 weeks or so, the Fed started to print the American money again, taking that control back. And this happened also with Abraham Lincoln, who 100 years before that started to print the greenback in the United States, making the American people free of all debt. And the greenback was printed by the government. It didn't belong to the Federal Bank of the Rothschild Empire. This was obviously not liked, and they lost control. This is why they shot him and got rid of him, because he didn't play their game.
U.S. Constitution, so the king could still continue to oversee the international affairs in relation to shipping and commerce of the United States, and the New World Order would be launched out of Washington, D.C. And like I said, a global tax would be instituted by the United Nations, and their plans would be fulfilled. But before they can do that, they have to bring all the banks in under one banking system, under the Rothschilds banking system. So the next objective, the Middle East. They got to go into the Middle East and get the oil. Why? Because there's only 9 banks left in the world that are not ran by the Rothschilds, 7 of which are in the Middle East. So if they go in and steal the oil, then the banks have nothing to create a banking system off of. They collapse, and then they got to borrow money from here. The warfare is real simple.
About 10 days after 9/11, I went through the Pentagon and I saw Secretary Rumsfeld and Deputy Secretary Wolfowitz. I went downstairs just to say hello to some of the people on the Joint Staff who used to work for me, and one of the generals called me and he said, "Sir, you got to come in. You got to come in and talk to me a second." I said, "Well, you're too busy." He said, "No." He says, "We've made the decision. We're going to war with Iraq." This was on or about the 20th of September. I said, "We're going to war with Iraq. Why?" He said, "I don't know." He said, "I guess they don't know what else to do." So I said, "Well, did they find some information connecting Saddam to Al-Qaeda?" He said, No. He says, "There's nothing new that way. They just made the decision to go to war with Iraq." He said, "I guess it's like we don't know what to do about terrorists, but we've got a good military and we can take down governments." And he said, "I guess if the only tool you have is a hammer, every problem has to look like a nail." So I came back to see him a few weeks later, and by that time we were bombing in Afghanistan. I said, "Are we still going to war with Iraq?" And he said, "Oh, it's worse than that." He said, he reached over on his desk, he picked up a piece of paper, and he said, I just got this down from upstairs," meaning the Secretary of Defense's office today, and he said, "This is a memo that describes how we're going to take out 7 countries in 5 years, starting with Iraq and then Syria, Lebanon, Libya, Somalia, Sudan, and finishing off Iran." The truth is about the Middle East is, had there been no oil there, it would be like Africa. Nobody is threatening to intervene in Africa. The problem is the opposite. We keep asking for people to intervene and stop it. And there's no question that the presence of petroleum throughout the region has sparked great power involvement. Whether that was the specific motivation for the coup or not, I can't tell you, but there's always been this attitude that somehow we could intervene and use force in the region.
After that, they got to go after Chavez in Venezuela. That's the last vestige. Then their plans really will be complete. However, in 1999, their plans were foiled. Like I said, this was an event horizon year. They weren't the only ones that saw this thing coming to an end. A simple review at the high school level, high school education, clearly details the fact that Great Britain and the Vatican had gotten together and had decided that the United States would never come to allow a one world global dictator to rule their country. And everybody knows that the Vatican has always had an agreement with the Nazis. Not so much Germany itself, but the Nazi party up there in Germany, operating out of Germany, that tried to set up a one world global dictatorship under Hitler a long time ago.
We are talking about the biggest thuggery of all, and that is the Jesuits in the Vatican. I always thought that the CIA was the problem and the other intelligence agencies. Guess what? There's a grand intelligence agency that the Vatican puts out, and all of those other crooks are operating under the Vatican intelligence agency.
This was a long-range effort by these guys to come up from the rear and accomplish this objective. Now, the